Hey, fifth grade. This is a quick review of our Roman numerals and our solfege scale and how they apply to each other. So we all know our solfege scale, which is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And in the key of C, the notes that make up that scale are C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now, for those of us who have ever played a piano before or are familiar with it, we know that between our do and our re, there's actually another note that we don't always use. And this is our sharp or our flats, depending on which way we are going. So a C sharp would be, you go to our C note and go up a half step right there to the C sharp. And a D flat would be the same note, but it would be a D down. So if we're going from C to D, we call that a whole step. And in music, we have whoever created this decided to, instead of calling this one, that actually two is a whole. So to get a whole step, you have to have 1, 2 notes. And a half step is just 1 note up. So half steps are easy because it's just half step, half step, half step, half step, just going up. But whole steps, you have to skip notes. And when it gets tricky, is a whole step from D to E makes sense, right? That's a whole step. But then what about E to F? That's only a half step. So you have to actually go from your E to your F sharp to get a whole step there. And then a whole step from F sharp up would be to your G sharp. You'd start being on the black keys. So that's why whole steps are a little bit trickier than half steps. But our pattern that we've created for our solfege scale is a whole step, a whole step, a half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And we did some work with this in some worksheets, so hopefully it's a little bit familiar. So what we do with our Roman numerals then is instead of thinking about these as do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, we think of them as numbers. And our do becomes 1, our re becomes 2, mi becomes 3, 4, fa, all the way up to the scale until we get back to do, which is either 8 or back to 1. It's probably easier if you think of this as just back to 1. So what we're doing is we're using numbers instead of our solfege syllables or instead of the note names. And the reason we do this is because it means that when we change to a different key, we can still use the same number system as long as we know the notes in that new scale. So to figure out those notes in that new scale, we always have to refer back to our pattern right here, where we have whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. So C to D, whole step because we're skipping the note here. D to E, whole step because we're skipping the note here. Then E to F, you'll notice, has no black key in between, so that's just a half step. And then from F to G, whole step. G to A, whole step. A to B, whole step. And then again, B to C, there's no black note in between, so that is just a half step. That completes our pattern. Now, what happens if we go to the key of G? This is where things start to get a little trickier. So, for our G scale, we could sing our solfege there. We just have to know where our note G is to start on. And then from there, we just do it as normal. So we'd start on G right here, and then we go up to A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Those are the notes in our G scale. And we figure those out because if you start on your G, you go up a whole step to A, up a whole step to B. Here's our half step, just like we want in our pattern from B to C. Then up a whole step, C to D, D up a whole step to E. And this is where it gets tricky. We want one more whole step, not a half step here. So to get from E up a whole step, we actually go to our F sharp. And that's different from the key of C because that is just a normal F. So this is where we start getting into our F sharps, and then half step up from F sharp is G, and that completes our scale. So if we wanted to number this or use our Roman numerals, we would do the same thing. We'd add G is now 1, A is now 2, B is now 3, 4 is C, 5 is D, 6 is E, 7 is F sharp because of our pattern, and then 8 is G. And we can do this for any scale. If we want to do it for like an F scale, say, we would start on our F, and then we'd figure out using our patterns where each of our notes are, and then we could number them. And then we could build chords around each of those numbers like we've been doing. So if I wanted to build a G chord, if I was in the key of G, my G chord would be G, and that would be our 1. Our 4 chord would be C, and our 5 chord would be D. And then 6 chord, 3 chord, 2 chord, whatever you want, as long as it stays within this key. So I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, you're always welcome to find me during my office hours, but I just wanted to make sure that we all knew what I was talking about when I talk about a Roman numeral or about our scales or anything else. All right, see you guys later.